The job is a basement floor that is covered in what appears to be a couple layers of floor paint. Sand and water mist are being used to help the 30 grit tensegs do a little more aggressive cutting of the floor than they otherwise would without the sand and the water. The reason for using the 30 grit tensegs is they're going to cut less aggressively or do less damage to the slab that would otherwise have to be repaired or recut more to take out any gouges. That sand and that water help them bite into that paint much more aggressively than they would if they had to do it dry with no help from any extra abrasive. Following this is hand grinding using a 7-inch cup wheel, 24 segment with a shroud, so of course it contains the dust. The reason for using this is just to grind wherever that diamond grinder couldn't reach, so the edges are cleaned up. Following this is sand and water mist again, but now with 70 grit tensegs. The purpose for these tools is to remove the scratches that were left from those 30 grits. The next coating is going to be so thin, only about 4 mils, so the scratches from the 30 grits would otherwise reflect through that coating. By using a 70 grit, it does smooth out or hone that floor, but because they are such a fine diamond, the sand and the water mist are going to help them to stay sharp and effectively keep cutting that concrete. Following this is vacuuming, which is really just to get rid of all the grinding dust that can be recovered by wand. Unfortunately, we can't shot blast because the coating is too thin. Vacuum wand is just there to take away all that dust. Next is cutting in the edges, simply painting along the corners and the edges where the roller won't be able to reach. Just like cutting in on a wall, it's the same for a floor. The roller that's going to be used is called an epoxy glide. It's a 1/4-inch roller that does a really good job of moving thin viscosity or low viscosity materials. Doesn't leave too bad roller marks. It's easy to deliver the material with it. It easily drops the resin as it's applied to the floor, in this case just floor paint. Care should be exercised during this part of the process while dipping and rolling to not leave puddles or extra ridges. But because the floor is so thirsty, it's pretty easy by eye to just make sure not to leave any large areas of excess material. As the floor dries, it's obvious that the porosity difference does show through this first coat, but as it dries, it really does become more uniform. Still, a second coat is required, not only to even out the floor, but also from the standpoint of durability. A second coat is going to make that floor that much stronger by having that extra layer of material. But the aesthetics are also important because the floor is going to look more uniform with that second coat of floor paint. Yield on the material is going to be about 50% more because the floor is now obviously not very porous. So a lot more distance will be yielded from a gallon of material than on a bare surface. And that's about it. An old coating covered floor or paint covered floor can quickly and easily be converted to a much easier to clean surface, and one that is obviously more attractive than what it was.